Hello children. Today we are going to take up another chapter from your textbook Flamingo, Lost Spring by Anise Young. The title of the story is Lost Spring, subtitle Stories of Stolen Childhood. Now, the pictures on this slide. Do you see any common link in these pictures? What do you understand by the title and the subtitle? Is it about you? Well, over the years, some students have told me that it is about students from grade 12 because yes, there is a metaphor in the title, and that is loss of childhood. And childhood can be called the spring of a man's life. During the times of pandemic, I agree that lost spring can be identified with my students of grade 12, with all the online classes happening and the stress that you all have. I understand. But this story is not about you. It is about millions of child laborers in India. And Anise Young has taken this title because she wants to show that these children have no spring in their life because of the poverty they have been born into. Yes, these pictures depict children who are employed in all sorts of menial jobs. It is about child labor. And for these children, it seems that their childhood has slipped away somewhere and they are caught in the clutches of earning livelihood for their family. They are deprived of schools and a life that every normal child deserves. A little bit about the author, Anise Young. She spent her childhood in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and the United States. Her father was an advisor to the last Nizam. He was a renowned scholar, and her mother also was a known person in the literary circles. She inherits the literary tradition from her parents. She is the author of several books, including Unveiling India, Night of the New Moon, Seven Sisters, and Beyond the Courtyard, a sequel to Unveiling India. Her Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood was published in 2005, focuses on children from deprived backgrounds. So, the story in question is about actually two protagonists, two perspectives covered over two stories. So under Lost Spring, you will find two stories. The two protagonists, one is Sahib, who is no longer his own master, and the other is Mukesh, who insists on being his own master. And that's why I said two perspectives. The story showcases the life of deprivation that the poor children lead, burdened under traditions which condemn them to utter exploitation, the apathy and callousness of the society, and the vicious circle of bureaucrats and leaders add to the sufferings of these poor people. So let's look at the point-wise summary of the lesson. The first story title is Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. The story opens with the depiction of grinding poverty and impoverished conditions in which the people who have migrated from Dhaka survive. They are deprived of school education, in fact, even basic living facilities. It is here that author happens to meet Sahib, who is a rag picker, and she inquires quite callously, why doesn't he go to school? Sahib-e-Alam is the name of our protagonist, children. The name actually means Lord of the Universe. So now, look at the irony in his name. His name means Lord of the Universe when he is actually just a rag picker. And therefore, unlike his name, he roams around the city scrounging for gold like early morning birds. Now, scrounging for gold is very important because these rag pickers would go with huge trash bags, their garbage bags, looking for anything that was worthwhile. And scrounging for gold does not literally mean that they will get gold, but anything that can be encashed. And morning birds, because they come very early in the morning and even before the sun rises, they disappear. So Sahib is so poor that he cannot even afford to buy a pair of decent shoes. The author mentions the example of the Udupi priest to stress upon the fact that times have changed for others but not for the rag pickers. I want you to turn over to page 15 and look at the last line of the first paragraph. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remain shoeless. Clearly depicting that over a period of time, he mentions 30 years by the way, things have changed for the religious priests, but it is the same for the rag pickers. And then a very important line which has been highlighted. They lived in Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away metaphorically. I've highlighted this because as you know, I keep on repeating, you will be getting MCQs based on references from the text. Yes, so this is a very important line. First of all, understand that there is a metaphor. Why? Because Simapuri is being compared to a place which is on the outskirts of Delhi, and yet, when you look at the living conditions in which people survive over here, or you look at the infrastructure, the development that is happening in Delhi, it appears to be miles away from Delhi. That's why Simapuri is a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away metaphorically. So, for a 2 marker, you just write this much, but if you get a long answer, please highlight the paragraph after this line on page 15, which will give you at least 4 points to justify why Simapuri is considered to be miles away from Delhi. Because it talks about how people who came here as refugees from Bangladesh and how they lived over here without basic drainage or running water, any kind of basic facility. Now, these people have come as refugees or squatters from Bangladesh, but what is more important for them is food than an identity. And that's why this line, food is more important for survival than an identity. And then the last line on the same page, the same paragraph, garbage to them is gold, it is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. So garbage to them is gold, again going back to the same thing, because they can get in return some money. If they get something worthwhile, they can encash it. Yes? Now there is another very important question. How does garbage have different meanings? So here you have the answer. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder, and for the elders, it is a means of survival. So children find it very nice, and they go with lot of motivation every morning because they think that garbage is full of surprises for them. But elders go with a purpose. They go with this purpose that they have to earn their livelihood by selling whatever they find in the garbage. And then the story ends with this very depressing paragraph. On one such morning, the author meets Sahib, and that is the time when Sahib informs the author that he has taken up a job at a tea stall where he is paid 800 rupees and all meals. I'll read this paragraph from page 16, and it goes on to the next page. Uh, I He has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulders. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. This is very important, the last line. I'll come back to this line. So, Sahib looks sad because he has succumbed to the pressures of life, and in return, what has happened? He has given up his free spirit. He has lost his identity. So, few MCQs from this part of the chapter. Garbage to them is gold. Why is author calling garbage as gold in the story? Yeah, option D, because of its encashment value. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag. Young says this because we've just discussed this. Yes, the bag represents his free spirit. Option D. So now for the next part of the story. I want to drive a car. This is the second part in your lesson, the second story about Mukesh. Now look at the contrast, children. I want you to see this. The first story ends with this line, Sahib is no longer his own master. The second story starts with this line, Mukesh insists on being his own master. So there is the difference. Sometimes you get this question, what are the similarities and the differences? Similarities are, yes, they are both from very poor backgrounds, and they are trying their best to just earn a livelihood, but the differences are in their perspectives. That is what we started with. So Mukesh, he aspires to be a motor mechanic, even though he knows little about cars. Living in Firozabad, the hub of glass industry, excels only in the art of bangle making because that's what he has learned. They work near glass furnaces. Now there is nearly 20,000 children. 20,000 children, students are employed in these glass making factories, and especially children because they can do something that is very well done by children only. So they work near glass furnaces with high temperature, dingy cells and no air. This is very important. Their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. This is from page 18, and it clearly shows the inhuman conditions in which they are made to work. To the extent, children, Mukesh's father and grandfather have both lost their eyesight. Most women in such families think that it is their destiny to work like this. And destiny, here it is said like this by Mukesh's grandmother, it is his karam, his destiny. So they think it is their karam to work like this. So little has moved with time in Firozabad. This is a very important line on page 19. Again, I've highlighted this because this line clearly shows that there has been no change as far as the lives of these people is concerned, just like the rat pickers of Sivapuri. Remember the example of the Udupi priest on page 15? That everything had changed around them, but life remained the same for the rat pickers. Immediately after this, there's another important line. Years of mind-numbing toil, look at the choice of words, has killed all initiative and the ability to dream. So the author says years of mind-numbing toil, which means that these people have lived such a life for years together that they have forgotten to dream. So we know that Firozabad is a city which is very popular for its traditional occupation of bangle making, and yet most of the people living here are poor bangle makers who are stuck in the vicious circle of poverty and politics. So, now the way Young asked Sahib, remember, why don't you go to school? Similarly, she asks these young men, why don't you organize yourself into a cooperative? What is the answer? They say, if they try to, they will be beaten up by the police. And that's what happens. That's their destiny. They talk about the spiral that moves from poverty to apathy to greed and to injustice. And then the author realizes that these people are caught between two worlds, one representing caste and poverty, and other the vicious circle of moneylenders, policemen, bureaucrats, and politicians. In their world, to do anything else would mean to dare. But when the author sees Mukesh, she feels there is hope. Why? Because Mukesh is ready to overcome all hurdles. He is ready to walk miles in order to fulfill his dream. And then the chapter ends with this line: few planes fly over Firozabad, which clearly depicts that opportunities do not abound in Firozabad. And it also shows us that Mukesh has very realistic dreams. He's very pragmatic, he's very practical. He is the son of a poor bangle maker, yet he dreams of becoming a motor mechanic somewhere. However, you can't miss this, that even in his dreams, he tries to be very down to earth. He does not want to become a pilot, as it is way beyond his reach. The city does not have an airport even. So, few planes fly over Firozabad. This shows the unattainability of the dream of becoming a pilot for children of bangle makers. So now MCQ on the second part. Can God-given lineage be ever broken? These words are spoken by option B, Mukesh's grandmother. I wonder if she knows the sanctity of the bangles she helps make. The underlined phrase symbolizes. Who says this? Actually, it's a line by the author only. And yes, option D, making bangles is sacred. Now for the 2 markers, why did the rag pickers come to live in Simapuri? It is from CBSE question paper 2014. Because Sahib's parents belonged to Dhaka, they and other rag pickers, they left their homes many years ago and they migrated to India in search of livelihood, basically food, isn't it? Their homes and fields were destroyed in storms. Promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world, explained. Very important line on page 14. The author had glibly promised to start a school. When Sahib inquires about the school, Young is embarrassed at having made a promise that she would not be able to fulfill, just like the false promises that the leaders make to these people. This is a very important line, children. So, do the poor have the right to dream? Why then does the author call Mukesh's dream a mirage? This is from sample question paper 2016. So, everyone has a right to dream, but Mukesh's dream appears to be like a mirage. Why? Because he belonged to a marginalized family. He wanted to be a motor mechanic in spite of the fact that he was born in the family of bangle makers. He lives in such poor conditions that it is impossible for him to learn to drive a car. He is bound by his lineage of working in the bangle industry. And working for years in those bangle making mills will make him blind, not equipped to break out of the vicious circle of politicians, middlemen, etc. That is why his dream is compared to a mirage. Life of the bangle makers of Firozabad shows the grinding state of poverty and traditions that condemn thousands of people to live a life of misery. Elaborate. This is from your CBSE paper 2020. It's a very factual question. You just have to remember all the inhuman things, inhuman conditions. So bangle makers work under dingy and unhealthy conditions. Children are deprived of education. Working conditions adversely affect their eyesight, end up losing their vision. Bangle makers exploited by money lenders, policemen, and their belief in destiny, their karam, their God-given lineage. Thank you, children. Good luck. I hope this presentation will help you in your preparation of your board examination, your midterm,